It is always a delight to realize that Chris chooses music that is perfect for our message. I don't know if you noticed that one lyric. I start every day with this compass in my heart. That's very important for our topic this morning, because we are talking about a life of character. It's the second Sunday in a series, as you heard, all about integrity. So a little recap. We started last week talking about what is integrity. We're using the book, the title, If You Know Who You Are, You Will Know What to Do by Ronald Greer. And that title comes from a story that we heard last week about Hendrik Kramer, a lay missionary who, when he was back in his home town in Holland, was asked by the people around him, the neighbors, what they should do about the persecution of the Jews by the Nazis. And he didn't tell them what to do. Instead, he reminded them of who they are by reading to them a scripture talking about the glory of the light that is within them, and sent them on their way. And they left, not with advice, but with a reminder of what was written in their hearts. And that night they started the Dutch resistance. We also heard the parable of the old man who realized that as he got older, his priorities were getting more focused, and he had exactly one that he used as his compass, and it was to don't fall, and which is good advice as we age. But adding on the meaning of the parable, we saw that it also means don't fall away from the path of my integrity. And we discussed the ways that we fall off of our path, away from our path. The first being simple: just ignore integrity. Just don't listen to that voice. And if anybody has tried that, as I have, you know how well that works. The second way of straying from the path is, it's narcissism. That's succumbing to the idea that I am so fabulous that I'm above everybody else. And I'm certainly above having to live by the rules of my heart, which is pretty difficult in our culture right now when we are bombarded with messages about just how fabulous you really are and how much more fabulous you would be if you just purchased this. So it's very easy to be seduced by the message that I am fabulouser than the average fabulous person. The other way he shares with us of abandoning our path is more subtle. It's drifting. That's when I don't even notice it. I don't notice that I've been making a course correction until it occurs to me I'm no longer on my own path. And it could be that I've been listening to all the voices of my culture. I could be listening to all the voices in my head from my family, so much so, whether it is to fit in or because it's so present, that I don't realize that it displaces everything inside of me that is genuinely mine. And very soon I find myself living a life that isn't mine. He mentions in the book two kinds of integrity. There is a personal integrity. That's when what I say matches what I do. There's a congruency between what I speak and how I show up in the world. And then there is moral integrity, and that's when I do something because it is the right thing to do, whether or not it's convenient. I do it because something written in my heart tells me that that is the right thing to do. Now, I want to add that I think there is a third kind of integrity, and it's spiritual integrity. And that's when I stay true to my spiritual journey. That one deserves some investigation too, because we are a center for spiritual living. So I can check, am I being true to my spiritual journey? Well, I can check. What is my go-to response when I'm dealing with the world? When I encounter something that in my opinion is off, or needs assistance, is my go-to response to do affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment? Or is my go-to response to get into the story? When I encounter chaos, is it my go-to response to create a time in my life where daily I meet the peace that passes understanding? I nurture it in me because I know I have a conviction about what that does in the world, the contribution it makes. I have faith in that. Is there, in my day-to-day activities, the evidence of me helping others because it is part of my spiritual conviction? That's important. I mean, can you count on me to, as we say in our jargon, to know the truth about you when you're falling to pieces? Or am I going to give more credibility to the story that you're telling me than to the spiritual truth that I say I believe? I was on vacation a while ago, and I bumped into somebody from my old life. Grew up together in South Africa. And I was telling her about some of the trials and tribulations I had been going through. I can't even remember what it was I was sharing. It was some difficult moment in life. But what I do remember is that as I told her the story, she would say, "Oh my God, oh, that's terrible." And I realized as she was telling me that I was feeling progressively uncomfortable because I realized something had changed in me. I had got to the point where people are telling me the stories of their life. I can imagine I might look disconnected because as they're telling me that, I am running in my own mind the thought about the wholeness and truth about their being. So as they are recounting the very real tragedies, difficulties, I'm talking to myself about their light, their inner guidance, their intuition, that which. Can you count on me to do that? Is there an integrity with my spiritual path? Or am I going to do I have more faith in the drama? Oh. So to me then, spiritual integrity is when I stay true to my spiritual path. You see, I don't have to tell anybody what's going on in my head. It's about, can I stay on my spiritual path and not on somebody else's spiritual path? I get that. Because it's not so much about which organization do you belong to? Which church did you join? It's more about, for me, that whatever I associate with, do I stay willing to think, to check, to question, to challenge? Maybe it's a very popular spiritual movement, but is it for me? Maybe it's the biggest religion on the planet, but is it for me? Maybe the promise in the teaching is enticing, but is it for me? See, I think the opposite of spiritual integrity, and I've done this, is when a person swallows an entire belief system without checking anything. It's a kind of way of sidestepping personal responsibility, letting someone else think for me. And it can show up as repeating things that other people say. He calls it in the book conforming, accepting, even copying others without checking, is it for me? So it's worth looking at. Spiritual integrity is when I stay true to my spiritual journey, especially during those times when it seems like I am being tested and it's not convenient. Oh, it's so easy to affirm goodness when everything's going well. But can I do it when I'm woken up in the middle of the night with bad news? Oh, it's so easy to affirm that there is a perfect heart, the love of God present in all people all the time. When I'm getting along well with my friends and family members and children, but can I do it? Can I affirm it when they are showing up in ways that irritate me? You see, to call myself spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that I have integrity. It's really about how I show up. Now, this is an important and subtle point. Integrity is not the same as predictability. In other words, integrity is much larger than just being consistent. See, I mean, you and I can be consistently bad. It doesn't mean we have integrity. Well, this is a hard way to say it, but here it goes. Let me just feel the hardness of this. We'll fix it later. You can expect someone who lies, cheats, and steals. You can expect someone who lies, cheats, and steals to lie, cheat, and steal. But that isn't integrity. That's just predictability. That's just being consistent with a stated value. Who said it? Show me how you do something and I'll show you how you do everything. Look, I've done them all. Lied, cheated, and stealed. And there's a way out. There's a way out of it. It's not a prison forever. It's that I have to get consistent with something else. I was overhearing a conversation. A young man was complaining to a friend of his at a coffee shop, and he said, look, I told her I was going to cheat, and then when I did, she got all mad at me. See, that's not integrity. It's just being predictable. Because he has confidence, faith in cheating. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, you and I, we each go to that in which we have faith. It means we progressively become more like the thing we have faith in, till eventually we become it. Now, that's important. So when we talk about integrity, it is not predictability or consistency. We have to take a deeper look, whether we're talking about personal or moral or spiritual integrity. It's about what we have faith in, and is it the highest that pulls the best of us out into expression in the world? You know, like fairness, justice, honesty, truthfulness. So my spiritual journey ought to be calling the highest version of myself out into the open. And when I discovered the Center for Spiritual Living, one of the teachings that really resonated with me, I learned that we are hardwired for goodness, which is why everything else fails. Isn't that something? As like Paul in the letter to the Romans said, it's written in your hearts. It's already there. And I learned in Science of Mind that which is written in our hearts, the blueprint, is universal. And it emerges everywhere and anywhere where people inquire within to look. In the book, the author says that these qualities are likely to show up in all religions, and he lists them. as compassion, truthfulness, kindness, tolerance, avoiding harm, humility, and I added the seventh one, goodness. It says something like this is likely to show up in religions that pursue self-knowledge and relationship to the divine. And we can use these qualities to help strengthen our own sense of spiritual integrity. You could just take each one of it and use it as a question when faced with something difficult to do. What would compassion have me do? But here's the interesting thing. You can't have one without the others. Because what is truthfulness without compassion? What is humility without truthfulness? What is tolerance without kindness? So it's not just one, it's all of it. It's important, especially when we think about that idea of drifting. The idea that our senses are being dulled by overexposure to the group mind. We drift very soon, conforming to what is the norm. I was just reading online a discussion about a recent political decision, and I was reading the comment streams. And as I was going down, I started feeling the stirrings of anger. And I realized I've drifted. I didn't pause to ask myself as I prepared to write my insightful answer, what would kindness have me write? I didn't pause to check in. How can I express my opinion in this very important world discussion without falling? Do I have more faith in what is written in my heart, or do I have more faith in the voice of anger and accusation? In the book, he says the word character comes from the Greek word that means to cut grooves in and to engrave. And you heard the beautiful reading. I read it again. Lives of character have etched into them values ingrained by years of practicing what we hold to be true and worthwhile. Engraved in. I was remembering a friend of mine who was in college and he needed a car and he couldn't afford a very fancy car. It was just, education costs an arm and a leg. So he managed to buy a used car. It was pretty beat up. And I remember he took it home to show his mom. And she looked at the car and she said, well, I think it's got a lot of character. It got me to think again about Paul in the letter to the Romans. Endurance produces character. And this idea that it's going to be a hard, arduous journey and you're going to come out the other side all beat up to have character. And I thought, you know what? No, there is another way. It doesn't have to take a lifetime and it doesn't need to leave you beaten up. We can start immediately to get right with what is written in our hearts. It's already written there. We can start with a daily review. The compass is there. All I have to do is take a little moment and inquire within. Today, how will compassion show up in my life? Today, in what way will truthfulness guide my decisions? Today, how will I be an illustration of kindness in action today? Today, In what way will those observing me see that tolerance is where my faith is? How will I avoid harm today? Where will I hold humility and balance it with goodness and self-knowledge? On page 127, he writes, I was amused by a quotation I read years ago attributed to Mother Teresa of Calcutta. She said, and I paraphrase here, I know God will not give me anything I can't handle. I just wish that he didn't trust me so much. Then more recently, I read with surprise her published personal letters of the decades in which she did not feel the presence or inspiration of God, and I realized her earlier statement was not meant to be amusing at all. Mother Teresa felt a call to help the poor and the ill of Calcutta. It was a call that would define her life. She followed it. She lived it. Year after year, those who lived in poverty were blessed because of it. Living in service was not just her way of life, it was her life. It became her identity, her character. Bending over beds, ladling bowls of soup consistently engraved character into her life. She didn't wait to be inspired or to feel God's presence. She lived a life of service in the times she felt inspired and in the times she did not. She just knew it was the right thing for her to do. She knew who she was. She had been called. She was following that call. Every morning as she awoke, she followed her call. Always in character. Well, I submit to you that we are always in character. And that character is shaped by what we have faith in. And according to what I've learned here, that is the good news. Because we can change the focus of our attention and develop a stronger faith in that which is already written in our hearts. Wonderful. I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale, letting your eyes close if that feels comfortable. As we turn our attention to that creative power, divinity, the mind of creation, whether you call that God or life or whatever it is you call it, we are talking in this prayer about that which is limitless, infinite, the source of everything, the source of compassion, truthfulness, kindness, the ultimate love. We salute and recognize that as the ultimate power so that we may feel our kinship with it and realize that we inherit its qualities, and as we consciously accept them, they have the opportunity to be expressed in this world, and out of this awareness arises an affirmation. The love of God is my love. The creativity of the living Spirit is my creativity. And it guides me into that which is right and true for me. And as I inquire within, I see that that which is right and good and true for me can only produce health, happiness, wholeness, help for everyone because of the principle of oneness. And so I let this awareness stir up in me a sense of gratitude that I have come home to the truth of my being. I am remembering what is true and enduring, and it is already, right now, as these words are being spoken, affecting what I identify with. My life is changing. And so I release this word of prayer into that aspect of the divine we call the law. To remember, to hold it all lightly, and to follow divinity rather than force my way through. And together we say, and so it is.